The silent scream. You hear that buzz when you stop and listen. The sound of spring, summer, flowers. But what if that buzz wasn't just background noise, but part of one of the world's most complex, ancient, and mysterious communication networks? Yes, we know bees dance. But that's only the beginning of the story. The real story goes beyond the dance, into the depths of vibrations, electric fields, and perhaps a forgotten ancient wisdom. Get ready, because we're taking our first step into the hive. Right now, we are at the heart of a multi-million-year-old engineering marvel, a communication revolution. A beehive. This is not just a honey factory. This is a living, breathing, vibrating superorganism. And each bee is like a thinking, communicating neuron of this giant organism. So how do these neurons talk to each other? Here's your first piece of trivia for friends. We've all heard of the bee dance, right? A bee finds a flower source and comes back to tell the others its location. It seems simple. But this dance, decoded by Austrian scientist Carl von Frisch in the 1960s, is so complex it's like a GPS coordinate system. The bee draws a figure 8 on the vertical surface of the hive. The angle of the straight line in the middle of the dance describes the direction of the flower relative to the sun. So if the sun is at 12 o'clock and the bee is dancing towards 3 o'clock, the flowers are to the right of the hive. The tempo and duration of the dance indicate the distance. Breathtaking, right? But this is just the first letter of the alphabet. But what if the sun is behind clouds? What if it's a foggy day? This is where the story gets interesting. Bees have special receptors in their eyes that see ultraviolet light. Clouds cannot block ultraviolet. By reading the UV light patterns in the sky, bees can pinpoint the exact location of the sun under any conditions. Imagine, we look at the sky and see a blue void. They see a complex navigation map. But there's more. As the bee dances, it shakes and vibrates its body. These vibrations emit sound waves at a frequency of 200 to 300 Hz per second. This is actually a low-frequency scream that the human ear cannot hear. Other bees feel these vibrations with their antennae to understand the dance's message more clearly. They don't just watch, they feel. Now, pay attention here. These vibrations aren't just about go there. Researchers believe that different commands like hurry up, there's danger, or calm down can also be encoded into these vibrations. So bees are essentially talking in vibrational Morse code. The next step is incredible. Bees also use a magnetic compass. They have particles of a magnetic mineral called magnetite in their abdomens. They can sense the Earth's magnetic field and even adjust their direction accordingly. This gives them an innate sense of direction even when the sky is overcast. Why am I telling you all this? Because it shows us that the bee's language is not just about movement and vibration. It's a visual, auditory, magnetic, and vibrational communication network. This opens the door to our next big secret. But all this complex information transfer raises a question. Did such a detailed language evolve just to say the flower is over there? Or is it telling something deeper, darker, more ancient? The answer might lie in the silent screams deep within the hive. The language of electricity. Forget the dance and the vibration. Because there's another language bees speak. And this language is about a force we can't see, can't touch, hanging in the air, electricity. Yes, you heard right. Bees talk with electric fields. And this ability takes them far beyond our understanding. It all starts with a bee's wing beat. Those tiny wings flapping hundreds of times per second don't just enable flight. They also build up a static electric charge on the bee's body. Much like the crackling you hear when taking off a nylon sweater. A bee, flying from flower to flower, becomes like a tiny, flying battery. It becomes positively charged. And the flowers? Their surroundings are usually surrounded by a slight negative charge. When a bee lands on a flower, it transfers its positive charge to the flower. This electrical transfer is a way of saying, "I'm here." Here's an amazing fact for your friends. Flowers can detect this electrical signal and respond to it. Just seconds after a bee visit, the sugar content of the flower's nectar temporarily increases. The flower responds, saying, "Here, my sweeter nectar is here, take it and tell your friends too." This is an incredible dialogue between the plant and animal kingdoms, established via electricity. But the bee's relationship with electricity doesn't end there. Let's go back to the hive. The queen bee constantly emits vibrations at a certain frequency. This is called the queen's sound or quacking. This sound tells the worker bees in the hive, "I am here, all is well." If the queen dies or leaves the hive, this signal stops. The cessation of the signal is an emergency alarm for the hive. The worker bees immediately spring into action to raise a new queen. Now, here's the real shocker. Scientists have discovered that bees can sense the Earth's natural electric fields, atmospheric electricity. Before storms, the electrical charge in the air changes. Bees sense this and return to the hive to stay safe before the rain or storm hits. So bees are one of nature's oldest weather satellites. So what does all this electrical communication tell us? It shows that the bee language is not only short-range but also environmental and global. Bees can read and interact with energy fields we aren't even aware of. This leads us to an inevitable question: if bees speak such a sophisticated electrochemical language, can we feel and record this language? The answer is yes. And what we record is not just science, but also music. Researchers use laser vibrometers and extremely sensitive sensors to record the vibrations in the hive and convert them into frequencies the human ear can hear. The resulting bee symphony is incredible. Different activities in the hive, feeding larvae, making wax, threat alarms, create different sound patterns and melodies. When you listen, you hear not the hum of a city or the chaos of a marketplace, but an organized, rhythmic, and purposeful communication network. Some beekeepers who listen to this music say they can tell if the queen is present, if the bees are sick, or if they are preparing to swarm, just by listening to the hive's sound. So, we are beginning to understand the language of bees. But is this language just one they speak among themselves? Or is it part of a much larger story about our planet, our history, and perhaps other intelligences? The answer may lie thousands of years in the past, in the secret behind ancient civilizations' worship of bees. Bees in the dusty pages of history. What if I told you that the secret language of bees is not just a biological miracle? Thousands of years ago, our ancestors were already privy to this secret of the bees. They saw them as goddesses, adorned their temples with their symbols, and perhaps tried to listen to messages from them. Now, we will rediscover this lost connection on the dusty shelves of history. A rock painting found in the Arona cave in Spain, estimated to be 8,000 years old, is the oldest depiction of a human collecting honey. But our ancestors weren't just there for the honey. The bee itself held deep meaning for them. Let's go to ancient Egypt. The symbol of the pharaohs was a scepter called Sedir or Neheb. And on this scepter was a bee motif. In Egypt, the bee, because of its golden color and connection to the sun, was believed to have been created from the tears of the sun god Ra. The pharaohs bore the title the Bee of Lower and Upper Egypt. So the bee was a symbol of royalty, divinity, and order. Just like the flawless operation of the hive. Let's look at the Hittites. In Anatolia, the bee held a significant role in Hittite mythology. It was one of the symbols of the sun goddess Darina. In Hittite texts, a bee is sent to find and bring back the lost god Telepinu. The bee stings him awake, and thus fertility and abundance return to the world. This story reflects the belief that the bee was not just a physical but a spiritual awakener, a messenger. In Greece, Zeus, king of the gods, was raised in a cave fed with honey by bees. The Pythia, the priestesses of the oracle god Apollo at Delphi, ate honey before prophesying. It was believed that honey gave them inspiration and vision. Why? Why did ancient civilizations all over the world attach such sacred meaning to the bee? Just for its sweet honey? The answer is no. Honey was just a result. What was truly fascinating was the bee's invisible connection with nature. Our ancestors were observant. They observed how bees followed the seasons, acted as if they knew rain and storms in advance, and worked in perfect order. For them, the bee was an ambassador that understood the language of nature and lived in harmony with it. The language of the bee was an introduction to the very language of nature itself. This gives us a crucial clue. Perhaps our ancestors were aware of the bee's communication methods. Maybe they learned the power of vibrations, rhythms, and natural cycles from bees. Could it be a coincidence that structures like Stonehenge or the pyramids are sensitive to specific sound vibrations and astronomical alignments? Or were beehives the inspiration for the first man-made acoustic chambers? The bee's hexagonal honeycombs are a perfect engineering marvel that provides the most space and durability with the least material. We can only explain this shape with the complex calculations of modern mathematics. How do bees know this? Instinct? Or are they connected to a universal language of geometry? This question leads us to the bee's greatest secret, perhaps the most surprising of all, the possibility that bees possess a kind of collective consciousness, a hive mind, that extends beyond our physical reality. The hive mind, the superorganism. Take a single bee. Its brain is smaller than a sesame seed. It seems like an insect moving with simple reflexes and instincts. But here's the big secret, it's not the single bee, the entire hive is the actual organism. And this organism has an emergent intelligence, a consciousness. We call this the superorganism. A hive contains tens of thousands of bees. They all do different jobs: workers, guards, nurses, wax makers, foragers. None of them act on the orders of a boss, a central command. So how is this perfect order maintained? The answer lies in the combination of all the communication methods we've talked about so far. Bees constantly create an information network with chemical pheromones, vibrations, dances, and electrical signals. This network is a distributed network, like the internet. Each bee is a node in this network and constantly sends and receives data. Here's the shocking info for your friends: a hive uses democracy in its decision-making processes. Scout bees searching for a new nest site find different locations and return to do the dance for these locations in the hive. Other bees watch these dances and gather around the dance they like the most, as if voting. The highest quality dance represents the highest quality location, and eventually almost the entire hive reaches a consensus on the best place. This is much more efficient and harmonious than human collective decision-making mechanisms. What if the hive is attacked? A bee releasing alarm pheromones instantly alerts the entire hive. This chemical message combines with vibrations, and within seconds, thousands of bees act like a single body in defense. There is no chain of command. Everything happens through instant communication and collective response. This concept of the hive mind goes beyond science fiction. Some scientists and philosophers believe that bees exhibit a kind of swarm intelligence. That is, individual units follow simple rules, but when they come together, an incredibly complex, intelligent, and adaptable system emerges. Just like data packets on the internet coming together to allow you to watch this video. This brings us to the deepest, most philosophical question: if thousands of simple neurons, brain cells, can come together to form human consciousness, can a superorganism consisting of thousands of bees also form a kind of consciousness? Is there a kind of collective awareness in the hive that we cannot understand? The answer is perhaps yes. And if so, this could fundamentally change our thoughts not only about bees but about the very nature of all life. The broken chain and the code of the future. But this ancient and complex language is now in danger. The buzz in the hive is getting weaker. Could we, as humanity, be silencing this silent scream we are just beginning to learn to listen to? Colony collapse disorder, CCD. The mysterious mass disappearance of bees. The causes are complex: pesticides, neonicotinoids, habitat loss, climate change, parasites. But perhaps the biggest reason is our failure to understand their language, our lack of respect for their frequency. Could the electromagnetic fields emitted by cell phone base stations be disrupting their magnetic navigation systems? Could pesticides be crippling their chemical communication pathways, their pheromone perception? Could noise pollution be interfering with their vibrational communication? Science says all of these are possible. Without bees, we don't just lose our honey. About 75% of the world's plants rely on bees carrying pollen to reproduce. Apples, almonds, strawberries, coffee, cocoa. They all depend on the existence of bees. How true is that famous quote attributed to Albert Einstein: "If the bee disappears from the surface of the earth, man would have no more than 4 years to live." So where is the hope? Hope lies in understanding and respecting their language. Scientists around the world are working to better understand the vibrational language of bees. Some are recording the vibrational songs of healthy hives and playing them to stressed hives to try to calm them and strengthen their immune systems. Perhaps one day we will be able to communicate directly with bees. Perhaps the greatest lesson the bees have to teach us is that communication is not just about words. It is vibration, intention, harmony, and working for the collective good. Their ancient language could perhaps shape the future of our technology and civilization. Distributed networks, swarm robotics, technologies in harmony with nature. The inspiration for all of these could be those little engineers in the hive. The next time you hear the buzz of a bee, stop and listen for a moment. Remember that within that sound lies millions of years of wisdom, a complex language, a warning about the health of our planet, and perhaps a code for how all of us can connect more deeply with each other and with nature. They are not just honey-making insects. They are the guardians of an ancient secret. And we are only now becoming aware of this secret. Keep listening.